Hello and welcome back to the fifth part of my LabBuildr Unleashed session. In the last chapter we stopped by starting the federated backup for the Hyper-V environment. The backup is now finished, as you can see here. It completed successfully. We backed up 8 point something gigabyte as the virtual machine we had to protect, the Hyper-V VM1. We had to also back up the application data, which is the configuration and all that stuff of the virtual machine. We have the VSS envelope, the index for the Hyper-V cluster, because that was our backup catalog, and then also the bootstrap for Networker. So the next part will be install Exchange with NMM into this environment. But before we do so, again, there's a short section for small tricks with labbuildr. So the first one is we do a get minus vmx where scenario minus match hyper-v. So scenario, oh, I spelled it wrong. Scenario minus match hyper-v. Scenario is something I've I've put it into the code where I can control virtual machines based on a activation preference and a scenario name. So all the Hyper-V VMs are in the scenario Hyper-V. I could then pipe this in suspend VMX or into stop VMX to shut down or start the VMs. I wrapped a little script around this that's called suspend scenario. And I can just specify Hyper-V, and it will suspend all the nodes being part of the scenario Hyper-V. So it will take a few moments, and then the virtual machines will be shut down. So the first one is suspended. We're just waiting for the second one, and then hopefully the third one will be suspended. I included this in my script just to easily control the behavior of virtual machines. Other than the scenario, there's also an activation preference, as you can see here. The activation preference is set at the virtual machine to allow me to control the boot order in a scenario. For instance, the domain controller always has the lowest scenario number, lowest activation preference of 0, to remain him up and online in a scenario until all the nodes are shut down. If the domain controller, like in this case, is not part of the scenario, it keeps running. That's why I built the DC node and the Networker server up front at the beginning, and they are part only of a master scenario called labbuildr. As you can see, Hyper-V itself is also part of scenario labbuildr. If I would start labbuildr as a scenario, it will start all the virtual machines and stop all the virtual machines. So let's get to Exchange. Exchange is installed with labbuildr minus Exchange, as you might guess. And we want to have a database availability group, and the database availability group should have 2 nodes. The start node, I don't need to specify this, but the Exchange CU should be CU8 at this point, which is the latest one. There's a no user option, which does not install any user or does not populate any user database. If you set this, no automatic user deployment will happen. There's an Excel spreadsheet that shows usernames, and you might want to add all the users you want to have into this, and they will be populated amongst the 2 database availability groups databases. So we don't need this no user. DAC no IP means we create a DAC without an administrative endpoint, means no IP address. We can't use this right now. Gateway comes and VMnet from the defaults file, so we do a save defaults to get the CU in, and we use the defaults. And we have some other parameters at the end, like we want to install NMM, and we have everything set just to start. Everything else comes from within the defaults file, so we switch back here and do again a measure command, because we want to see how long it takes. The exchange setup will take approximately 40 minutes per exchange node with CO8. If you start with CO1 or 2, it will take approximately 25 minutes. So with every new version of Exchange, the setup gets quite a little bit longer. So that's everything that we need. We fire up the command. Networker modules will be installed by user selection, so there will be an automatic deployment of Networker modules from Microsoft. We do the normal checking and we compare the parameters that come from the defaults files with the running environments. That means I go again and talk to the domain controller, test for the domain name and IP address to make sure that nothing wrong is specified. So he starts up with the first Exchange node. We might want to have a look at the Exchange node. It gets a set of disks for the local database and for the database availability group and for the recovery database. So I have also a set of disks for recovery database, for recovery functionality if you want to recover to disks. If you have a data domain or a AFTD, we could also use with the Networker file system to mount the database across the network from the data domain or from the AFTD. So the setup runs, and this is a good chance for me to do a short break. I will get back after, let's say, an hour when the setup is done and show you how to configure the backup for Networker modules for Microsoft and to what part I've automated the stuff and where you have to do some manual steps. Thank you and bye-bye.